So we're going to kick things off with our lightning talk. As always, we got a lot of feedback from you all that is like one of the big highlights of these discussions and of the insiders. So we will kick things off with that, and then we're going to dive into a discussion really around how we can improve the forum, make it more inclusive, just like different ways perhaps that we can structure things, make it easier, kind of lower the barrier for folks. And then we're going to spend some time going through product updates, spend a little bit more time kind of going through that. Usually we have so many things to discuss, but we want to spend some time doing that. And then we'll also do the after hours. So if you have any spicy questions, as always, you can ask them there or throughout this session, but we'll stay on for another 20 minutes or so afterwards if you want to, but we also know you may have other meetings you want to get to. So, all right. Well, then to kick things off, we have Daniel, who's going to be sharing all of his experience and expertise working to support cocoa farmers across West Africa. He's going to share a little bit about his ODK workflow, how they've been using entities, and maybe share some things that he'd like to see from ODK, which should lead to some really great discussion. So Daniel, I'm going to stop sharing my screen here, and you should be able to share your screen.
Yeah, hello everybody, and thanks for the opportunity here to present a little bit what we are doing in ODK and else. Can you all see my screen? Is that working?
Yep. Yep. It's not in presenter mode. Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, now it is. Okay. So Gabos is a Swiss company. We have been starting about 2009, working with cocoa farmers in West Africa with a very much paper-based workflow for data collection. We started in last April, starting to use ODK after quite extensive research for already existing tools that are basically available on the market. We finally decided to go for ODK because of its flexibility and adaptability to our needs, quite different needs. So just a little bit about Gabos. We are based in Switzerland, specialized for the first mile of the cocoa value chain in West Africa. And our clients are in the sweet industries, and we help them to build direct supply chains. With our team, we support farmer and especially their organizations to be compliant with, for example, EUDR regulations of the European Union or standards like fair trade or Rainforest Alliance. We focus on agroforestry, is a very important part of our activities to renew farms, overaged cocoa farms with a highly diversified agroforestry system. We have social activities in supporting communities next to just the farming activities. We look into traceability issues that also in respect to EUDR regulations. Now digitalization, which got an important part in supporting organizations, cooperatives close to farmers in digitizing their workflow with ODK. And then last but not least, delivering high quality products to our customers. That's a little bit what we do. That's mainly concentrated in Ivory Coast in West Africa. Now, just to give you an idea what our challenges are and why we are working or why we are using to a high extent entities and why we also switched. That was also the reason to switch from Cobalt Toolbox to ODK in the very beginning, because ODK already had this possibility to link different entities to each other. So we are working in regions, of course, different regions. I think that's quite standard. We have villages in these regions. We have many villages in these regions. They're all not yet registered. So these are also used as entities in the workflow. Then we have farms. That's the next entity we are using. We have, of course, different farms in different villages. And to these farms, we have agronomic plots, mainly for cocoa, but there could be other products as well, that sometimes overlap each other, and we have some areas like protected forests that plots that overlap protected areas, which might cause problems for the whole workflow of product traceability. So it's quite a complex and interrelated area we are working in. So we work with this entity-based workflow. We have the villages, or just geographical information, not only villages. We have the farm as a very basic entity where we register the farmer in. We have information about the farm, the farmers. We also attach then, talk about that later, the whole social, the families, the workers, everything that are attached to farms. And to farms, we have the plots, the agronomic plots, which are attached to farms. So that's the basic workflow. These are the basic entities we are using that are related one to each other. For the farm entity, we have mainly social relations. We have the farmer that belongs to the farm entity. Every farm entity has an ID, of course, the ODK ID, but it has also an ID that is created by the farm in an automated way. That also should be a unique ID, a unique code to every entity, which is now created directly within the form. We have the farmer with its name. That should be also a unique in the sense that not the same person in the same village with the same name is registered twice. So we have many checks in the form. Is this person already registered or not? Dependent on probability, the same phone number, the same national ID gives always alerts in the form. The farmer has, of course, family members, one wife, two wives. The farmer can also be a woman, of course. So sorry for being so explicit here, but that's the reality usually, that the farmer is the man. We have many children, of course, so we have many dependencies on here where we use repeats in a probably quite standard way on registering family members, their children belonging to that family and the farm. But to a farm does not always only belong the farmer and his families and his family. There might be also a worker and his family. He might have a family or not. Again, the same question about children. And you know, maybe you heard about cocoa and all this discussion about child labor related to cocoa growing. So that's always a big discussion about do we have children in an age where they are very much in danger of for child labor? So by customers always ask these kind of information. So there are many information about children. Do they go to school? Don't they go to school? Everything. And we also have day workers working on the farm. So they're not constantly employed by the farm, but they might work just 1 day, 2 days, 1 week for the farm, but also they have to be registered. Then we have a farm owner, which might not be the same person as the farmer himself. So it's quite a dynamic and always changing social situation around the farm. One challenge we face here a little bit with ODK is that, for example, family members, children, we register within entities. But then again, we have the problem because we do this, we visit the same farm every year, at least once. these kind of information which we stored in the repeating questions cannot be accessed the next time we visit the farm again, because questions from repeats cannot be stored in entities. That's one basic challenge we face, and one thing we would very much like to see a development of ODK in the ability to register also repeats, or at least aggregated data out of repeats, like counting the number of children, average age, or whatever kind of aggregate data out of repeats, but also this cannot be saved into entities. That's quite a big challenge for us, that is not yet possible. Yeah, that's what I said. So we have many repeat questions. These alerts is a very important thing which we build into the forms to prevent multiple duplicates. Yeah. The same thing to the plots. A plot is the other very important entity we're using. On a plot, agronomic plot, there is one or many products. There are one or many products grown. For us, it's mostly cocoa, but the farmer usually also has other plots for vegetables, for dairy, or that might be palm oil or whatever else they grow. We, of course, get the geodata, polygon and point for these plots. Then we have the productivity. We measure the productivity based on different indicators that we store in this entity. And then we have an important factor about diseases which are present on the plot. So there are many, that's not all of the information we register on the plots, but just as an example, quite different informations relating to the plot which we register in this entity. In the end, for example, to calculate based on the surface, based on the productivity, based on presence of disease, what is the productivity of cocoa for this plot? Exactly. That is important after then for the traceability of the product, that if we buy from a farmer cocoa, or if the cooperative buys cocoa from the farmer, which has one or several plots, that we know exactly, basically he is able to produce this and this quantity. If he delivers more than that, we would have to go and see if there is a problem. Is this cocoa really coming from this plot, or is he selling us cocoa from his neighbor, for example? So this estimation of the productivity per plot is quite an important factor. And that is now done automatically within the form based on productivity, diseases, and the size of the plot. One challenge for us is that we never start at zero. Every cooperative already has a register of the farmers, of the plots. They have their system with their internal coding system. Every cooperative has a little bit of different system, so we have to be quite flexible, and it doesn't make any sense. And we want to use this already existing data, so we connect the forms not only to the entities, but also to CSVs created from these registries that we already have from the cooperative. Now, the goal, of course, the objective, of course, is that after 1 or 2 years, we don't have to use anymore these external CSVs, that everything is managed within ODK. But for a beginning, that's why we have to, the enumerator has to be able to choose either from a CSV or to update or to register a new data set with the form. So he has multiple choice always in the beginning. Important point is this automated creation of unique codes depending on the cooperative and their system. So we have to be quite flexible there. the forms automatically look up the codes that already exist and then creates a new code that is unique within the form. Prevention of duplicates, of course, an important point. So we have many alerts. We have a problem, just a reality that, for example, it's all a dynamic system. Farmers sell their plots. If they have several plots, they sell one plot to another farmer. And last year, this plot belonged to farmer A, and then the next year, this farm belongs to farmer B, or this plot belongs to farmer B. So we have to be able within the form to change the farmer who owns or who manages this plot. And it's also, and then the internal code of the plot changes. So we have to be able to track these kind of changing codes. Also visible for the enumerator. What is the history of this plot? Then what is also important that if the enumerators are in the field, that they are able to select the plot either by code or also by on the map. So with geographical information, they are on the plot, and they can more or less automatically choose the right plot. Otherwise, we have a danger that they choose the wrong plot, and they store data about the wrong plot. A big problem we have in managing or being compliant to new regulations of the European Union is that we have quite some restrictions on polygons. For example, if we have overlapping polygons more than about 10%, they will be rejected by the automated checks by the European Union to track traceability of commodities imported into the European Union. Now we are working in an environment where, of course, the boundaries of the plots are not very precise. So enumerators just walk around these plots without having any precise indication where to walk. Just the farmer indicating them. So automatically we will have intersecting or overlapping polygons, which is a real problem for data analysis after. What we also sometimes see is our geometric error in the polygons, that they are not really proper polygons, that there are some self-intersection of the polygons, or the polygons are not really closed. These are all things that will be rejected by European authorities while sending the polygons together with the traceability data into these quality assessment systems, and will be rejected. So as a consequence, we have to integrate, or we already did integrate, quite a complex workflow, exporting data out of ODK and then importing it into QGIS and doing all this kind of analysis about errors in the polygons, correcting the polygons, deleting overlapping polygons. So we have written scripts within QGIS exactly to do this kind of work. Now, the problem is that next year we visit these farms again. We, of course, would like to have the data that have been corrected within QGIS. Because as a consequence, for example, the surface of the polygons change, of the plots change. And with that, also the productivity changes. So we have to get these data again into QGIS. We are at the moment using PyODK to do this, which is at the moment one step in the workflow that cannot be done by the cooperatives in an autonomous way. because it's just too complex for them. That's one challenge we face. Now, another thing we are using ODK with is for the product traceability. So we use the farm ID as the basic ID, and then the plot ID or several plot IDs belonging to that farm. Every purchase with a farm has an ID. Then the delivery of these can be multiple farm purchase has an ID. We bring that into a warehouse where we store it, and then of course the product has an exit out of the warehouse where we have in a delivery unit going on a ship in export. We need to have the farm IDs, all these IDs together to identify where are all these products coming from, including the plots, and then linking all that with the polygons to be compliant with EU regulations. We are also doing that with ODK, so that we know exactly all the plot IDs in every, let's say, 20 container, in every container leaving the port. We know exactly which kind of, from which plots the cocoa is coming from. Also here we have the same problem with repeats, which we would like to be able to store them in entities. That we have, for example, the smallest entity, the farm purchase ID, that we could use this ID. At the moment, we store this in an entity-based workflow, in a repeat question, this purchase ID. But we would like to store that as an entity to be able to use that afterwards in, for example, identifying all these farm purchases in a container, which is not possible at the moment. So that's again this same question about repeats and entities. Then also we would like to have alerts for deliveries. We have not yet done that, but that's something we would like to include, that if a farmer delivers more quantity than calculated for his surface, that we will get an alert in the warehouse the moment it arrives. Or farmers that have been excluded and or not yet registered. Again, this kind of regulation. So we have the farm ID, we have different plots, and we have, for example, protected forests, and we have overlapping areas. This, for example, we couldn't accept a product from a plot that is entirely within a protected forest or just overlaps with a protected forest area. So we couldn't accept this. The same thing applies if we have two plots overlapping above a certain percentage. We couldn't accept these products as well. As a consequence, because we never know where exactly the cocoa is coming from, because the farmer usually mixes it up. We don't have a real physical separation from different plots. We cannot accept the whole products. So detecting these kind of overlaps while on the field, while taking the polygons, for example, would be something very useful within ODK, that there is an alert, for example, or at least neighboring plots are displayed within collect while the enumerator is walking around a plot to take the new polygons. That would avoid partly this complicated workflow outside ODK within QGIS, for example, or that an alert would be triggered if a geopoint is taken within a protected area. These kind of thing would be quite useful for us to, well, get more efficient in collecting geographical data. Yeah, this intersection of polygons with protected area or with each other, then the self-intersection that we see quite often, that polygons taken with ODK have a lot of self-intersections, which really cause a problem when transforming these polygons into forms that can be shared with others. Or not closed polygons, that's also a problem. Again, that's a repetition, yeah, with PyODK and QGIS. Now, about offline entities, that's quite a useful thing for us now to be able to use that, because what we see that an enumerator gets into a village where he wants to register a new farmer. The village is not yet registered within ODK, so he would have to first register the village, then get connect to Central, to synchronize with Central, and then to register the farm where he can choose the village, and then again synchronize with ODK to register people where he can connect them within the form to a farm, and then go and register plots. For each step, he would first have to connect with Central and synchronize the data before continuing with the work using another form that depends on a previous one. Now, with offline entities, this is now really possible to do that offline in the field, one after the other. So in that case, he would first register the village, with some information about it, with a geopoint. Then that will be available once he registers the new farm. And then the farm ID will be available once he registers the farmer and the families and everything. And last but not least, the farm ID is also available once he registers the plot and can link that with the farm ID. So that's very useful now, being able to use these offline entities. Well, yeah, these, exactly. What is important, yeah, that these kind of duplicate checks, that they are really at every step or every relevant step within the form, that it's checking for duplicates, to also reduce level of controlling data at office level, that most of mistakes that are possible to happen, that they are not even able to register these data, and to reduce work load at the office to check data. A next thing we are going to do is, as I said in the beginning, we are quite active in agroforestry systems, managing agroforestry system, which is quite a complex thing to do. That's the next forms we are about to develop. So we have the farm plots that are already existing. On these farms, we will have new farm IDs that are specific to agroforestry plots that might not cover the whole farm, but just a part of it. So that's a new farm ID, but the two are linked. So we know, okay, the agroforestry plot is on the plot of another farm. Then we will have to register how many plants we are planting, but also counting plants every year once, and then replacing plants. So we already always know how many plants of every species are on that plot. Then we have the farmer trainings, regular farmer trainings we would like to register. And then as a risk assessment, measuring different indicators for recurring on-field visits to see in what stage the field is, to have a good risk assessment, and planning intervention if ever needed. So that's the next thing for us to develop. So yeah, what we would like to see from ODK in the next while, or which would be very useful for us, as already said, is in some way or another being able to store repeat questions or data from repeat questions in entities. That would be quite helpful for our workflow. And as far as I know, this also applies for aggregated data from repeat questions. Like, for example, these alerts, somehow a way to get an alert when we walk, when an enumerator walks on a polygon that is already registered, and a little bit a more robust polygon capture or computation to prevent all these kind of little errors of self-intersectioning polygons, which are quite tricky to resolve also in QGIS. It's quite a tricky way. Yeah, we had this once in the forum as well, that a trigger on multiple fields or a trigger on computed fields would be quite useful for us. What we do at the moment, because we allow the enumerator to select an entity from different sources. That may be a CSV, that might be a completely newly registered or calculated ID of that plot. So there are multiple sources of this information, and we had to integrate a otherwise not really useful question just to have a trigger on all following questions to retrieve the information out of the entity. I don't know if I explained that very well, but this is a little bit a problem that would be quite nice to have this. What we are also sometimes missing, I mean, it's very useful to get data out of ODK with OData. That works very well in Excel. But the data manipulation in Central sometimes a little bit difficult, that you always have to go into in Cato forms are not able to manipulate data in a user face, for example, in data form, in a table form. So we always have to go into every single form to change data if ever needed, and you can't do that in a table view. That would be quite nice to have some sort of a table view of the collected data of an entity or submissions, to be able to edit data in a, let's say, Excel-like environment as a table view. For us, next steps are automate this workflow outside ODK in combination with QGIS a little bit more, so making it less complex for users to work with that. Maybe a data manipulation outside ODK in table form, that would be quite nice to have. And then the next thing for us is to develop a dashboard, may that be for clients, but also for the users, the cooperatives we are working with in Superset. As we see it at the moment, it's not yet quite clear, but I think with Superset, with intermediary database to connect between Superset and ODK. But that's still up to develop. It's not yet completely decided. But that's somehow the direction we want to go. Yeah, that's it. Thank you very much. That was a little bit about our workflow. I hope it wasn't too confusing, and it's something to discuss about. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Daniel. It looks like you've built quite a workflow on top of ODK, and it's really incredible to hear about it. Really, maybe rapid fire, we could do a couple of questions from the chat. But really, let's do it rapid fire so that we can make sure to get to some of the product updates we had planned. Dan asked, is this all on one server? Do you have different servers for different seasons? Is it starting to be a lot of data? Do you have any thoughts or concerns about the data scale?
No, not yet. All on one server.
And he also had a question about PII. A lot of personal information, it sounds like, being collected about individuals involved in the farming. Is there, are you anonymizing any of that, or is there any concerns around PII for this?
Yeah, of course, when sharing these data with institutions like the European Union or with our clients, or of course they have to be anonymized. Yeah. So we are only sharing anonymous data. Yeah. But there is not yet an established workflow within ODK to anonymize, sorry for my bad English, all these data. There's no yet. So we do that outside in Excel and taking all personal information out.
Another question is, how big is the project team working on developing this?
3 person, yeah.
Amazing. It seems like somebody was saying, like, this is starting to feel like a full supply chain management software.
Yeah, it's actually going into that direction. We have to be careful not to overload things. Yeah, it's actually going into that direction. Yeah.
We thought it'd be great to hear from you because we see you on the forum a lot, asking really thoughtful questions and sharing your process. I was wondering, would you be willing to share your forms kind of as they've come together now? You may be doing a quick showcase post as a follow-up saying, okay, you heard the talk, here's what some of the forms look like a little bit. I think there would be interest in taking a look at some of the ones that you can't share.
Yeah, I think sure. Yeah, that should be possible. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that would be amazing. I think there's a lot of interest in this area of kind of application. We heard from Hobson doing some overlapping work. I think there's overlap with what Mathieu is doing in ecology. And certainly there's a lot to learn, I think, from what you've put together. So really appreciate you taking the time. So really quickly, maybe we'll spend just get 2 ideas on the forum. Again, I think we wanted to have this topic of forum because Daniel feels like the perfect example of someone who's really leveraging the forum to push the possibilities of what can be done with ODK. Does anybody have any quick thoughts on things that they'd like to see to maybe encourage more of that kind of deep conversation, deep work that we do together? I made this a hard question. But maybe you know what? We actually, given time, why don't we continue the conversation about the forum on the forum and maybe give it as a to-do for all of us. So hopefully Daniel will get a chance to share some of his forms in the showcase, but even if not, I encourage everybody to take a look at some of his posts, if that's okay, Daniel. We'll put you on the spot. Look at the way that he has used the forum to develop his forms. I feel like I've learned so much from him also, and different ways that we can use ODK. We've been thinking about features to support some of his work. So I think it's just a really great model of what the forum can be. And hopefully we have more of those kinds of discussions coming up in 2025. With that, over to you, Ali, on some of what we're going to be developing.
Sounds good. Maybe before I share my screen, Andrew, you took yourself off mute. Were you going to share?
I was thinking about it. I'm relatively active on the forum. I read most posts. I reply where I can help. I've found that, yeah, search is pretty good, but often a straight Google search, but putting the domain into the search to drill in that way rather than trying to use the inbuilt discourse search, even though discourse is probably the best forum software that's out there. Having used many others, and it's the best I've ever used. There's often many posts about the thing many threads about the thing you're looking for. And sometimes trying to, it's like, yeah, you look at it and then suddenly you realize it's from 2012 and you're like, no, that's actually not useful anymore. Like things have, ODK has moved so much so fast in so many areas that sometimes these things are completely irrelevant now. So sometimes there's almost like, can we kind of start archiving or pruning some things where it's been superseded by better responses or different approaches? It may still be, I'm not saying delete, but maybe kind of have some kind of flag to indicate that this is, quite old, and, just kind of prune down the results and things that you're looking at.
That's a great suggestion. You can definitely look into that. Yeah,
And
unless posts.
And it's hard to stop people from just putting up the post being like, how do I X without searching? And you often want to say like, there's a thing called search. Have you tried using it? But so you end up with 50 posts asking about the same thing. And sometimes people will just like point directly back to like, go look over here instead, instead of answering it directly. Because otherwise then you get the same thing. Instead of having lots of posts about a thing, you also get lots of questions about the same thing.
Yeah, definitely. Great feedback. We'll continue maybe that conversation on the forum. And we'll probably open it up as well when we do the summary post about this session so we can hear from other folks as well. So hopefully everyone can see my screen all right. Yes. One thumbs up would be great. Hopefully, yes, everyone can see it. Yes, thank you, Andrew. Awesome. Okay. All right, so just we're gonna go through some product updates really quickly, but we can stay on a little bit later as well, since we'll kind of go through these rapidly. For the new people on the call, we have a product roadmap. A lot of you know of this. I'm gonna go through some of the things we're working on now, but if you're curious about what's next, what's coming up later, I'll quickly share a little bit about that, but you can always go to the roadmap. We try to keep it up to date as much as possible. So you can have a look there. On the central side of updates, we're currently working on navigation and draft redesign. This was shared on the forum. So if you haven't seen this yet, in the summary, we'll share all of these links so you know where to find them in case you can't search for them and find it. Also, we're working on purging entities and deleting deleting them from the UI and then purging after 30 days. So that's something that we're working on right now, and iterating on the user management flow. A lot of you have given feedback on this. We're still working on it. It's a complex problem, and so we'll share more about that on the forum hopefully soon. Oh, and here's another quick detail shot of what it looks like when your form is published. So over here, it's more of a disabled, and then looking at what a published version looks like. On the collect side of things, we're working on laying the foundations for showing media in the summary or the hierarchy view, some entity performance work, and finally, editing submissions on device. I know some of you are really excited. We're very excited about this as well. There's a lot of entities work that had to happen before this. So we're very excited to be kicking this work off. For those of you that participated in one of the insider workshops on this before, we really appreciated all your feedback on it. This was kind of the original concept that we were thinking about and kind of building on what that means. This is what the flow is going to likely look like now. And so maybe I won't go too much into detail, but instead of that kind of dialogue, we want to simplify that and just have a simple edit icon that you can access when you go to view the form from you're ready to send. And the kind of key points here that we want to reduce the steps. We're also not doing cloning straight away, so that's something we're going to consider a little bit later, and we want to get feedback on that because there's lots of implications of cloning or making a copy of your forms. And then for once you view that edit history, we're working on how to make that as intuitive as possible and showing the most recent edits at the top and then the history below. And if you're working on a few forms at once, just trying to think about what's the best way to show the user what changes have been made and then giving them clear feedback about which ones can be edited, which would be the most recent edits. And then once it's edited on Central, it can no longer be edited on device. So we're going to share some of this on the forum, where we're at, what we're thinking about, so you can give feedback as we continue to build this out. In case you haven't seen some of the displaying media in the summary, this is just a quick glimpse as to what that looks like. So instead of seeing the raw data, you're able to actually see the media that you've captured, and that will make it a lot easier if you're kind of reviewing the summary of your form to make sure you have everything captured correctly. And then when you're viewing it after it's been sent, that'd be helpful as well. On the web forms side of things, we just shipped the rank question. Super exciting. We're trying to make this really intuitive, easy to use. You can quickly drag or use the buttons on the right to move things up and down, and making sure that things don't get moved accidentally as you're kind of filling out the form. So we're quite excited about that. Coming up next, the default geopoint, also very exciting. We've been doing a lot of feedback rounds on understanding what works really well with Collect, how we want to incorporate that into web forms. We're also laying the foundations for edits, and then we'll be sharing a little bit more about opting into web forms for specific forms from Central. So we'll share some more about that soon. Quick little sneak peek. A lot of you participated in some of those workshops, so this shouldn't seem surprising. You've probably seen some of this. We'll share more about that, and then we'll move on to GeoPoint with the map. And looking forward, Yao, over to you.
Yes, I'm still, thank you for sharing that, Ali. I'm still a little stunned by what Daniel has been able to build. It's like mind-blowing amount of work there. But we're not stopping. There's more stuff that we want to do in the coming year. So we want to just revisit some of the favorite moments and your wishes. So we heard you that you want more office hours, more lightning talks, smaller group discussions, hearing from the core team, more entities, more research. Yes, we heard all that feedback. And I hope this first Insiders Call gives you a sense of some of the things that we have lined up. So we're going to be doing more of what you want. As always, we have open lines of input, so whenever you want something different or things are not working well for you from an insider's perspective, just let us know and we'll make sure to make those adjustments. As far as some of our priorities for the team and some of the goals for next year on the software side, we want to get web forms to production status and get that released. We're working on a new ODK website, which will showcase more of what ODK can do for folks to make it easier for users to discover the capabilities and the power of the platform. Submissions, we already talked about that. We want to make sure that those things are coming soon. On the entity side, some of the things that Daniel has been mentioning, being able to create and update multiple entities with one submission, just generally smoother workflows like the deletion and the purging, customizing how entities are displayed, like sort order and these kinds of things are coming. Entity ownership and being able to change that entity ownership. I think Daniel had mentioned like farms can change hands. So we want to make sure that those things are coming. This also includes assignment and those kinds of things. And then the user management that Ali had mentioned. So we've heard a lot, not just from Daniel, but we were just at WHO HQ in Brazzaville, and we heard the same issue about repeats and creating entities. Andrew, I know, has mentioned it. So our ears are open, our fingers are ready to work. So we're ready to type and build code to meet some of these needs. So those are the things that are coming in 2025. As far as next steps, first, thanks to everybody who gave feedback. your feedback is how we make improvements to the software. If you don't complain, Ali doesn't like me saying complaining, but if you don't provide direct feedback about what is not working well for you, we will not be able to improve it for you. And so whenever ODK is not meeting your needs or expectations, just let us know. The answer might not be yes, but we won't know till we have that discussion. So submissions are coming, geo questions are coming, user management is coming. Our next call is on March 5th. We'll send out emails about that. So with that, I've rushed through the things. We have 4 minutes left. 4 minutes left to before we wrap up the call, and then we'll have after hours. So yeah, we can stop sharing and open it up for any questions folks have about what I talked about or what some of the stuff that Ali talked about. Any questions so far?
Looks like lots of excitement in the chat. Does anyone want to elaborate on any of these? Matthew?
No, especially
A few people came off mute. Go for it.
Well, I guess so for some of the coming soon stuff that there aren't any timelines on, is there also maybe some timelines coming for the coming soon for some of them?
The real spicy question.
I cannot I'm gonna I cannot answer this question, so I'm gonna hand it off to either Hélène or Ali to talk about timelines.
I don't want to commit. Hélène, over to you.
We know that we're going to be starting edits on device very shortly, and then we'll know more once we get into that work, how long that will take, and that will help us make better predictions about the rest. We know that there's some unknown unknowns that we want to kind of get a little bit more clarity on before we commit to some of the others.
One thing that was not on the roadmap that I wanted to point out was Daniel had mentioned something about like superset, and that's a bit of feedback that we've heard over the years that people do want to be able to like connect some of these more powerful tools to ODK, and like we want to explore sometime this year, I don't know when we'll fit it in, like the ability to make it easier to connect tools like Superset, where maybe ODK does like maybe split some of the submissions or just make it easier for folks to analyze the data in that way. That's going to be a big effort. We have a team member who's very excited about working on that kind of problem. We're starting to see that it's becoming more important. So that one is not even in the roadmap because it's like so far out, but I wanted to sort of address what I saw in Daniel's slide and say that like that's an idea that is in our brains, and we're starting to sort of start the initial research about what that would look like for the platform. So it's something that we've been thinking about internally. Any other questions? Oh, we're even at the hour. So I will say that thank you to everyone. Well, okay, pause. We're going to be on after the call, but for those who are leaving now, I want to say thank you so much for being here and your time and your attention. It's what an exciting presentation that Daniel put together. It's just like my brain is full of all the exciting things that he's built and the things that we need to sort of unlock to help him do even more. I hope you've been inspired by the presentation and are excited about all the things that are coming down the line. So thanks for your time, and we will stay on for as long as folks want to stay on to have a slightly spicier after hours where we can talk about I don't know how spicy data collection can get, honestly, but we'll be here to answer any questions and have any discussion. So thanks so much, and have a great morning, afternoon, evening, and see you March 5th for the next Insiders Call. Okay.